Want to take a moment to record a video on these new laser rangefinding binoculars. These are the Vectronix Shooting Solutions Vector X laser rangefinding binoculars. When they were announced in February 2024, they created quite a buzz and they were hyped up quite a bit because some influencers and YouTubers and other people had early access to these, gave some initial reviews, and it really got everyone clamoring for these things, in conjunction with what the specs were when Vectronix announced these binoculars. So let's just dive into it because, there's quite a few things to talk about here. First off, I'm not of any, I don't have an audience of that caliber to get early access, so I did buy these myself. Paid full price, got them from CS Tactical. So if you're looking for optics, check out CS Tactical. They have some really good, they carry quite a few good lines of optics for shooters, so definitely check them out. But, got no special treatment, was able to get these though, full price. These are the 10Xs. I chose the 10Xs. You can get them in 8, 10, or 12s. I wanted 10 because it's a good balance between field of view and magnification. I also got what is known as the DMR reticle. So DMR reticle means it doesn't mean, but there are two reticles, one in the lower left, one in the lower right of the field of view. You can get an SMR reticle, which is just a single reticle on the lower half of that right barrel. The reason why they have two different reticle options is because it works in conjunction with their laser, or not their laser, but their range enhancers. So they have what's called a range enhancer. It's a glorified range magnifier or basically a teleconverter for cameras. So it says 40% extra magnification. So it's basically a 1.4 teleconverter in the photography world. And if you multiply the magnification of the bino by 1.4, that's what you're going to get. So with an NX, you get 11. With a 10, you get 14. And with a 14, you get 17, roughly. I didn't buy a set of the range enhancers. I didn't really care to get them. I kind of wish I got them just to see how they are. I will say that sight unseen, I would expect that the image quality will decrease with the range enhancers installed compared to just without them. With teleconverters in cameras, you will lose a stop of light, so there's less light coming in, and there's also some softness that ends up happening with the image because you're adding another element, lens element, that's not really part of the full system itself. It's like kind of externally added onto a lens, the camera lens. Same concept here. You thread them onto the objective lens of these binoculars to get the range enhancers installed. So you're adding that extra element, piece of glass, in front of the objective lens. And so it's not the best way to design a lens system to get that magnification, but it's just a nice way to temporarily get that extra range. So I would expect that you're going to lose a little bit of image quality. I don't know how much, but that's what I anticipate. I also anticipate that you're going to lose a little bit of light transmission. I can't quantify that for you because I don't have the equipment to test that kind of thing, and I don't even have a set of the range enhancers. But I just want to throw that out there for anyone looking to get them. But let's go ahead and dive into this because there's a few things to talk about as far as the binoculars. So first off, the design is pretty good. It's just your standard binoculars with a full hinge. It's full length hinge. Unlike something like this with a split hinge, these are the EL ranges from Swarovski. But you can see here, this has got a full length hinge, so your hand can't wrap around the barrels like on the Swarovskis. So the ergonomics is great, but these are typical of any kind of binoculars you see out there. It's got a rubberized armor finish. They call this a gray, but in my eyes, it's green. I have no idea why they call it gray, but it looks green to me. I don't know. That's what they say. It's got your typical eye cups with 4 positions, fully extended and fully retracted. You got dual diopters, one for the left barrel, one for the right barrel for the HUD. So if, for those of you who don't know, focus binoculars with the focus wheel for your dominant eye, and then well, in this case, let me retract that. You're going to focus the binocular for your right eye. Then you're going to adjust the diopter for your left eye so that they're in sync whenever the right eye is in focus with the focus wheel. And then you'll adjust the right diopter for the HUD, because when you're looking at the HUD with your right eye, it's got to be in focus. It's much like a rifle reticle, or a scope reticle rather. You got your typical buttons to control the menu system in the HUD, and then you have the laser rangefinder button on the right side. And so all that, it comes comes into play with the internal solver, which is applied ballistics, which is considered the gold standard for ballistic software right now, or currently. I mean, people still favor applied ballistics. There's a bunch of good solvers out there, but applied ballistics is considered still the standard by which everyone is measured against. So you got an internal HUD, which menu system displayed on the HUD. You can control with the buttons on the left, and then laser rangefinder active on the right. You also get these eye cups, which they come with. They're actually just slip-ons. They're flip-ups, and they're actually fairly decent. Although I'm not a fan of any. I've never been much of a fan of any of the eye cups that I've encountered on binoculars. They just seem kind of, I don't say flimsy, but they always just pop off when you don't want them to. And if you run them in a bino harness, they'll come off. Like even on these, if you see that, I just rub it against the bag and it'll pop up. So I tend not to run them, but I just want to keep them on here just to have them on for the sake of testing them out. I probably want to point this out. On this, you have a tripod mount adapter system. So on the right barrel on the bottom, there's an exposed plate with 2 screws. You can just screw on a provided tripod adapter or tripod mount, which is really cheesy that they give you. It's just a piece of plastic with a 1/4 inch 20 thread in the middle of it, so you can mount it to whatever you want as far as a camera tripod is concerned. I have the Really Right Stuff Vector X mount, which is really great because it actually allows you to adjust the cant of the binocular while it's mounted. So if you understand what that means, let's bring this up real quick. So whenever you have a binocular set up on a tripod, you're gonna adjust the binocular for your eyes, right? And so based on your pupillary distance on your eyes, you will have the binoculars set at a certain spread, right? And so let's just go here. That's kind of, I've got a very narrow IPD, interpupillary distance. So if you want to level the head to gravity, right? More often than not, your bino will not be level, but in this case, it's level for me because that's how I set it. But let's say somebody else wanted to use binoculars and your tripod's already set up, head's level, and they adjust out. Well, in this case, it looks really bad because now you're kind of canted. So instead of canting the tripod this way, which gets the head out of balance, what you can do is just loosen up this knob on the Really Right Stuff Vector X mount and just adjust the cant accordingly. So it's level with the head's level to gravity, and then your binos are level. So that's kind of why I like this. It's an expensive adapter, but if you're a particular person like me who uses tripods a lot, this is kind of the best adapter to get for the Vector X. Anyway, moving on. Talked about the ergonomics, the body, the flip-up cups, battery system. So this has the ability to use CR123As instead of CR2s. CR2s, that's the most common battery used for laser rangefinders, and that's like the most awkward battery to get because they don't really carry them in stores. You kind of have to hunt around for them. CR123s are pretty ubiquitous because they're very common in flashlights. So the fact that you can use a CR123 instead of a CR2, that's great. However, I have an 18650 battery in here, which is basically 2 CR123s put together. Kind of. I mean, a lot of people argue against that, but it is kind of like that. So you get kind of double the power of CR123. So what you can do with an 18650 is get more life in the battery life to power your binocular. It does require a second. They provide you with 2 battery caps because the CR123A uses a shorter battery cap, which threads into the system. But of course, since you have a longer battery, it's going to extend out, so you need a second cap, which I have that installed right now. Sorry, I'm flicking around my hand because there's a bee flying around here. So we have that battery setup for this binocular. But let's go ahead and dive into kind of the pros that I found so far in my testing of this. The image quality is kind of the first thing I look at, and in all honesty, it's pretty good. I've not handled the Leica Geovid Pros. A lot of people ask me about that compared to Swarovski EL Range TAs. But based on the Geovid, I've tried the older Geovids, and this compares favorably against those. Now, against the EL range TAs, which is what I have, these are a step below. The resolution is there. I think the resolution is there. It's not as crisp in certain scenarios, like I would say lower light conditions. I feel like I'm getting a little bit more resolution in the EL ranges for some reason. I think in hazier conditions, the EL ranges might look a little bit better as far as color, but that might come into play with the tint. But in general, I think this is really good. I think this is on par with most non-laser rangefinding binoculars out there that consider themselves, you know, that next tier up from like just basic budget binoculars. So I think from what I've seen so far, the image quality is really good. I have not found myself in a situation yet where I said, oh, I really need to get my EL ranges. So while I think the resolution is better on the EL ranges, I've never said, oh, I need to look at the EL range because these aren't working out. So in that's the best way I can quantify the image quality right now on these. So I would say they're above average. I would say they're a step below the Swarovskis. They don't have the field flatteners the EL ranges have. You do have barrel distortion on the edges. The clarity of the edges is still pretty good though, but the barrel distortion is there. A lot of people don't like the field flatteners on this, on the EL ranges and NL Pures. I do. I like the flat image because it feels like I get a better depth of field on those for some odd reason. I think it gives me better depth perception. So that's why I liked the field flatteners. But a lot of people like the fact that there is barrel distortion because it gives you a sense of like 3D for them, because then they know, oh, I'm looking at something further or in front of something. So that's why they like that barrel distortion. I don't know, it's personal preference. So let me quickly talk about the elephant in the room. That's gonna be the blue tint. You don't notice it when you first get them. When I looked at them, I was looking through them and I said, hey, these don't seem to have much. I didn't really notice it. I'm like, oh, it's really blue, right? Did not notice it. So day one when I got these, I did not bother to look at other binoculars. I just wanted to test these out kind of without any other sort of influence of other binoculars, and I felt that the color was good. However, once you look at each barrel independently, you will notice the blue tint. So if you look at the right barrel by itself with just your eye, and then you switch to the next barrel, left barrel, you're going to see that this one's got more color. This one's got a bit of a blue tint. It's there, but I will say you're not going to be cognizant of it. So that's what I feel about the image quality. I say it's above average. The blue tint, not going to be a factor too much. I will say the depth of field on these are actually pretty good too. For some reason, it just feels like I'm able to focus on quite a bit very quickly without moving the knob very much. So I think the depth of field is pretty deep, especially when you're getting to like the 300, or sorry, more like the 400 yard and beyond. I feel like the depth of field increases. Like I can focus maybe on 500 yards and still see 4 and 6 relatively well. Like I don't have to touch the focus knob. Now the focus knob itself, it has a weird feeling to it. So I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but if I kind of just touch it a little bit, if it's kind of like got a little bit of play on it, and it's not really, I don't want to call it spongy. I want to call it like dead play. And then you feel like kind of a tension there. The tension is there after you, and it's consistent. So I think that has to do with the fact that there's not much revolutions in this knob. Like if you turn the knob and you look at like market, it's not going to turn more than like 1 1/3 revolutions around. So there's not much physical focus range on these binoculars compared to like my other binoculars. Like this turns forever. Like, so I have a lot of turning to find focus something. I thought when I was feeling these, okay, they don't have much play in there, but when I'm looking at stuff, the focus is fast. So I think the reason why it's got this weird dead play in here is because you don't want to just quickly push the knob when you want to fine tune it, right? You just kind of want to build up that movement on the knob. And so I feel like kind of helps you out there. So a lot of people might think that this has got a spongy effect. I think if you start using it more, you'll feel that, hey, this knob actually makes sense the way it's tensioned. So it's got a good depth of field, and the focus is quick. So I think it's really fast as far as acquiring stuff at different distances and in your image, in your field of view. So really like that about it. The electronics, top notch. The rangefinder so far has been really good. I think the only times I've had some issues where some targets where they're cylindrical, like they have these like kind of like tanks out, like oxygen tanks, but they're like empty. Those types of, and they're shot up, and those types of things, it seems like it doesn't get a range on them because it just diffuses the laser. But those are the weird edge cases I've seen. But like I've tried things like light poles and whatnot in neighborhoods, and it seems to get those easily. So I think the laser rangefinder is good. They've quoted, I can't remember off the top of my head what the distances were for like tree, deer, or deer, tree, and reflective. But I recall thinking that it was less. So I think it was 3,000 yards for a tree. I was getting more like 2,700. And I'm taking average conditions. Like today is a hazy day. I'm only getting like 26 or 2,700 on a tree. But if you're a stickler for that, I don't think they're to spec, but I don't think anyone's really going to care that you can only range 2,600 yards to a tree. Well, maybe somebody will, but I don't. So I think the laser rangefinder is good and it's pretty precise. I've heard some complaints where the reticle and the laser don't line up. I thought it wasn't either, but I was doing more testing and they are lining up correctly, so no issues there. Onboard ballistics I mentioned earlier is going to be applied ballistics. And then you also have, wow, there's a lot of bees around here. You also have the environmental sensors built in. They're in front of the binocular, which is typical of most laser rangefinders with a ballistic solver. And then the HUD is spectacular. Can't really describe too much how great it is, but the HUD is easy to read, easy to navigate, and you got all the information you need. I would say, I mean, it's the Kilo 10Ks have a good HUD too, and I think it's equivalent to that. I mean, all the information is there that I need on this HUD, so rank it up there. Now, as far as the battery system, I mentioned earlier, but I think the battery system is a huge plus. The fact that you can use commodity CR123As, or you can go to those rechargeable 18650s. That's really good. I like the tripod adapter support because unlike this, where I have to wrap around a cinch LR, which is kind of hokey sometimes, and it builds a lot of bulk to these binoculars, it's nice to have something built in like this. My only complaint is that it's on the right barrel, so you still got to deal with that whole being off balance on a tripod. I don't know. I've never seen something that's centerline that I like. All the bridge adapters I'm not a fan of, so it is what it is there. So I mentioned the cons. The blue tint is there on the right barrel. Ergonomics are the kind of the major con I'll bring up. So holding the binoculars in my hand, I just naturally grip it like this. My index fingers are kind of closer to the knob of the focus wheel. However, if you look at when I'm holding it, where are my buttons? They're in between my index finger and my middle finger. And so when I want to go hit the laser rangefinder, I'm kind of hunting for this button, and I'm coming down and forward, or if I try to use my middle finger, it's awkward. I feel like the ergonomics are poor on these. If I'm going to nitpick anything, compare it to my EL ranges, I naturally grip it here. My hands fit around the barrels. It's a very comfortable feeling. I can grip it. It doesn't feel like I'm holding a big brick. And then when I put my fingers in, I kind of naturally set it right here on the bridge, and the bridge is where the laser rangefinder happens to be, the button to activate it. And it's relatively close to the focus knob. So this is a very good ergonomic feel. I love the feel of these things. They're comfortable in the hands. This feels like I'm holding a brick. No offense to Vectronix, but I wish they had moved this button higher or something. It didn't need to be this big. You don't need these index marks here, which really do nothing for me. I just wish they went with a smaller button that was close to the focus wheel right here. That would be perfect. With the button control here, the D-pad, I think you can just leave it as is. You really can't do much there. You can make it smaller, and offset it here. But I think they made a huge mistake here, and this should have just been a small button here. That's just my opinion, the way the ergonomics are. Because the way I naturally grip these things with my hands, I'm holding it like this, and the buttons are like nowhere near my fingertips. So I think people with larger hands are probably going to find this even worse because you're going to have your bear claws around this thing, and I don't know where you're going to be. So that's my biggest complaint about these ergonomics. Startup time's a little slow. So it goes to sleep. You can set what's great about it, you can sync it up on your phone, and you have software to control it. You can either set it up in Binocular on the menu, or you can configure it from the app on the phone. But it goes to sleep, and once it goes to sleep, you have to hit the laser rangefinder button once, and it's about 2 to 3 seconds for the HUD to come back online, and then it's powered up. So if it goes to sleep and you're, let's say, in our hunter stage, and you're running up to the stage, and you want to get on the glass, and then you got to activate, and you got to wait a few seconds. So it might annoy some people. My only opinion there is you either touch the button when you know you're about to use it, so that when you get behind it, that it's going to be ready to go. And I probably would set the sleep time a little bit longer. I set it for 30 seconds just for take some photos and record videos of the HUD. I would set it up higher at the detriment of battery life. Probably want to set it to 60 seconds or something. You'll lose battery life, but maybe use the 18650s, which recharge. You should be fine there. And the last thing to mention, as far as cons, if anything, right now are going to be the support reputation. Vectronix has a poor reputation for providing customer support. People who've broken like the Saffron Vectronix, what do they call those things? They're standalone, the Terrapin X's, the Terrapins. If you ever broken a Terrapin, everyone jokes that, oh, you've got an expensive paperweight. And so that's kind of a thing that's just sitting there that people are kind of keeping in the back of their mind when they're looking at this company. People not familiar with Vectronix, they won't think about it, but people who know Vectronix have that kind of looming over them. And so Saffron Vectronix created this company called Vectronix Shooting Solutions, which is what this is sold under, to be more consumer-based. They're consumer-facing. So hopefully that means that they're going to be more supportive of consumers, because consumers going to be like the regular Joe Schmo hunter is going to be the person buying these things, your PRS shooters, whomever. So hopefully we'll see better support. And I will say that I did get support from them. When I opened up the battery cover for the 18650 from the packaging, the spring was broken. It was out of it. And like you could try to get in there with pliers, but it was no way I was getting in there to get it set. So I emailed them, or I filled out the contact form. Took a few days, but they did respond and said, hey, that's not normal. Can you try to put it back in? If you can't, we'll send you a new one. And I told them, hey, I tried to. I can't get the pliers to, I just can't get it to set the spring in there. And so they said, okay, cool. We'll send you a new battery cap. And they did. It came straight from Switzerland, which is where they're based at, although these are made in Slovakia. So I did get support, and the response time is a little bit longer than people would care for, like a few days. So we'll see how that transpires as far as Vectronix Shooting Solutions and their support. But in any case, what should you buy these? The price on these are what, $2,800 for the 8 or 10s, and then the 12 powers are $2,900. Expensive binoculars, comparatively speaking, to other binoculars out there. Compared to the EO ranges, which were 4K, I think you can get them now for $3,500 because there's like this 75th anniversary sale for Swarovski. But there's a lot of options in this price range. The SIG Kilo 10Ks, which you can technically get cheaper. The Leica Geofid Pros. I would think that these are going to be probably in consideration there at the top of the list, without having touched the Kilo 10K Gen 2s or the Geofid Pros. I will say that these are probably what I would look at, I would recommend right now. Based on what other people are saying, these are probably better than those other binoculars as far as image quality. The feature set here, there's nothing lacking other than a few things like the ergonomics and maybe the startup time of the HUD. Other than that, I think these are solid laser rangefinder binoculars. Sorry, it's a lot of words to say. I highly recommend these right now. I have the EO range TAs, and I'm going to use these in an Earl Hunter coming in 2025 for the next upcoming season, and we'll see how these go. If these end up working out for me, I may end up selling my EO range TAs because I have NL Pures, and but I do like these. I still think these are some of the best laser rangefinder binoculars you can get in terms of image quality and getting a decent rangefinder with ballistics built in. This is kind of on the next side of it. And sorry, there's noise there because there's aircraft flying. But this gives you everything that this doesn't have as far as electronics, HUD, better software, and arguably a better ballistic solver with less image quality or lower image quality. So that's kind of where these two go head to head. If I need image quality, the utmost best image quality, I'm going with Swarovskis. If I don't, I'll go with these without like the concern that I'm losing so much that these are like a bear to work with. I think these have enough image quality that the other tangibles that this offers puts it over the top as far as the choice for most people compared to an EL range TA. Anyway, a lot of talking, kind of speaking fast, but if you want to hear no more details, check out my vlog, or my blog rather, ocapg.net. I already wrote an article which I published with a full review and photos of this laser rangefinding binocular, and hopefully you got some good information out of this. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out and I'll try to answer them as best I can.